You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Hey, and welcome back to the Black to Business Podcast. I am your host, Monique T. Marshall, and I am truly so glad that you are tuning in. And as always, thank you so much for showing up for yourself and also for your business today. So this week's solo episode couldn't come at a better time because we are officially in July, and for a lot of us, it feels less like the middle of the year, and honestly, it feels like a reset, a fresh start. So July 1st came around and I felt a shift, and one that really had me reevaluating everything from my schedule to my goals, even down to how I'm showing up into my relationships and also how I'm building community. And maybe you've been feeling that as well. And that's why today we're talking about what I'm calling the mid-year check-in you didn't know that you needed. If you're anything like many of the entrepreneurs in our community, the start of the year might have felt like a big blur. And now we're here and we're halfway through, and some of us are wondering, where did the time go? And also questioning whether those goals from January still make sense for where we are now. And some people might be feeling behind, or you might be feeling drained, or like you've been doing a lot, but not necessarily moving forward. And I also want you to know that you are not alone in that. And this episode is all about checking in and doing so without judgment, but with curiosity. So we're going to talk about how to reflect without beating yourself up, let go of those goals that no longer serve you, reconnect to your capacity and energy. And then we're also going to talk about setting goals for the rest of the year that feel grounded and, most importantly, doable. And of course, we're going to do this with ourselves in mind, because as Black entrepreneurs, the pressure that we carry is not just about business. It's cultural right now. It's political. It's systemic. And that's why giving ourselves permission to check in, to reset, and move differently is not only smart, it's really necessary. So let's get into it. Okay, first things first, before we do anything else, we need to take a real look at the last 6 months. And I want to emphasize, this is not about judging yourself. Too often, we treat reflection like a performance review. So we tally all the things that we didn't do. We beat ourselves up for not being, quote unquote, more confident or further ahead. You think, well, what's the point? I didn't hit my goals anyway. Or maybe you're moving so fast trying to fix or pivot that you don't even realize you're carrying stress and self-judgment into the second half of the year. But I want you to approach this from a place of curiosity and not criticism. Also, let's be real. The first half of this year has been heavy for a lot of us. There's political unrest, economic uncertainty, and attacks on Black leadership and Black spaces in general. So it's not a small thing to be building a business and trying to create while also carrying and thinking about all of that. So if you feel like you've been in survival mode more than creative mode, you are not by yourself. And still, I want you to know, even if your growth hasn't been loud or it hasn't been visible, it is still valid. So maybe you didn't launch that big thing, but maybe you had a hard conversation that you were avoiding. Or maybe you didn't double your revenue, but you doubled your boundaries. Maybe you didn't show up on social media every day, but you showed up for yourself when it counted. And that's what counts. So here's what I want you to do. This is your mid-year self-check-in and not your mid-year shame. So I want you to take 10 to 15 minutes to respond to these prompts. What actually went well in the first half of the year, even if it wasn't a part of your original plan? What felt aligned, like, yes, more of this, please? What consistently felt heavy, forced, or out of sync? What lessons did you learn, especially through the things that didn't go as planned? And where did you show up for yourself or your people in ways that aren't visible on paper, but were deeply necessary? And you can journal this, you can voice note record it, you can talk it out with a business friend or accountability partner, whatever works for you. And the point of this is to get clear and not be critical. And then see what's actually happening and then give yourself that full picture and not just the highlight reel. And here's one of my favorite reframe questions. So I ask, what would I celebrate in someone else if they went through what I've just experienced? Because oftentimes we are more compassionate to others than we are to ourselves. So if your best friend told you they were feeling stuck or uncertain right now, what would you say to them? And then I want you to say that to yourself. And honestly, the goal of this reflection is to start from where you actually are and not where you wish you were. Because if we skip this part and we jump straight into fixing, we're going to end up building goals on top of burnout, pressure, and also shame. And that's not what we're doing here. This is really your moment to reset, and I want you to be honest. I want you to have clarity, and then I also want you to have some care. Okay? So now let's talk about the goals and specifically the courage that it takes to let some of them go. So I know we love a fresh planner in January, and we, meaning myself, because I love me a good old planner. But what happens is we map out the year, we declare what we're going to accomplish, and we say, this is the year. And sometimes it is the year. But sometimes by the time we get to July, we've changed, life has changed, the world around us has changed, but we're still trying to chase a version of success that no longer fits who we are or what we need. And that's where burnout lives. It's in that gap between where we are and who we feel we have to be in order to keep up with goals we no longer even connect with. And ask me how I know? Because I had goals that I set at the top of this year, and at that time, it did feel exciting. But a few months into the year, I started to feel disconnected from those goals. And honestly, they weren't bad goals, but they actually didn't fit the direction my business was moving in. And more importantly, they didn't fit the season that I was in personally. So what I had to do was I had to remind myself that goals are meant to serve me, not the other way around. Now I want to say that again for someone who needs it. Your goals are meant to serve you. So remember, they are a tool and not a rule. And when you grow, your goals should grow too. Or sometimes they need to go. And I know that could be a shock factor, but this year really is about realignment and being intentional and really getting back to what are your goals doing to serve you. So with that being said, I do have a reflection prompt for this part of the check-in. So you want to think, what goals are you holding on to simply because you said you would? Which ones still feel aligned and which ones feel heavy or forced when you look at them now? And then what goals feel rooted in who you are today, not who you were 6 months ago? And I think that this is especially real for us as Black entrepreneurs because we are constantly being told to prove ourselves, to be the representation, to build for the culture, to make our ancestors proud. And yes, we carry that with honor. But if we're not careful, that sense of responsibility can morph into pressure. And that pressure can keep us tied to goals that are performative rather than purposeful. So letting go is not failure. It's actually strategy. And it might not seem like it, but it's also leadership. It's clarity. It's emotional maturity. And sometimes the boldest moves you can make is to say, I thought this is what I wanted, but I've grown, I've learned, and now I'm choosing differently. And this doesn't mean that the effort was wasted. It just means you're paying attention now. And so here's another practical approach to this. You want to go through the list of goals that you set for yourself this year. And next to each one, I want you to ask yourself, is this still important to me? Is this still aligned with my energy, my capacity, and my direction? Am I still holding on to this because it's mine, or because I feel like I'll disappoint somebody if I shift? And then I want you to give yourself permission to rewrite the list. And you don't have to do this from scratch, but from where you are right now. Because when you release the weight of that misaligned goal or goals, you make room for something that's better, goals that actually reflect your current clarity, your current values, and the version of you that's still becoming. Okay? So now that we've reflected and we've released, I want to talk about reconnecting. And this is the part where you really check in with yourself, not just your business, but yourself. Because what I'm seeing a lot, and I've also experienced this even myself, is that we try to set goals and make plans from a place of depletion, and we don't pause and ask ourselves, what do I actually need right now? What will help me feel more supported, more centered, and more grounded in this next season? And when I asked myself that recently, I realized that I needed to get back into being intentional with relationships. But when I say intentional, I'm not talking about in a transactional way. I'm talking about circling back to people that I've met or I work with, or folks I haven't talked to in a while, and I just wanted to check in with them. So I'm not pitching anything. I'm not asking for anything. Just, what are you working on lately? How's your business going? Is there anything you're excited about or anything you're navigating now, challenges or what have you? And sometimes the answer is just having a plain old conversation. And sometimes it does open up a door for a collaboration or a mutual support. But either way, for me, it has been a powerful reminder that community doesn't always look like big events or group chats. Sometimes it's just that one-on-one check-in that reminds you that you're not alone in this. Maybe you can get insight from someone else, or maybe you can just support someone else. So here's your invitation. I want you to ask yourself, what do you need more of in this next season? Is it connection like this, or maybe it's space, or maybe it's more structure, or maybe it's more rest? And it doesn't have to be complicated. So take a few minutes to journal or even just talk this out with a voice note. I say voice note a lot because that's been my thing lately. So either way, I want you to think about what's been giving you energy lately, what's been draining you, even if it's something that you used to love. And what do you want to feel more of as you move into the second half of this year? And this is that clarity that you want to take into that goal setting. Not what sounds good or what someone else on social media says you should be doing, but really what aligns with how you want to live, how you want to lead and feel right now. Because in all of this, alignment is not just about what you do, it's about how it feels while you're doing this. All right, so now that we've discussed that, let's talk about goals. But this time, we're not setting them out of pressure or panic. So we're not scrambling to catch up to someone else's timeline. We're setting goals from a place of clarity, and now we're aligned. And now we also have a deeper understanding of what you need, how you work, and what actually matters to you in this season. Because here's what happens when we don't pause to reset. We actually end up carrying goals that aren't even ours anymore. And as Black entrepreneurs, you've probably felt the weight of that even more. So whether it's providing or proving you belong in certain spaces, or trying to hit unrealistic goals or numbers, or just like grinding for visibility when you actually really need some rest. So before we jump into the planning part of things, let's ground this moment with a few questions. Well, actually, I have two questions. Who do I want to build with, support, or be in relationship with? And the second question is, what does success feel like for me, not just in my business, but actually in my life? And I chose these questions because I did not want them to feel surface level. I really wanted you to take some time to reflect, because these answers should shape your strategy and not the other way around. Now, once you've gotten honest about that, here's what I want you to do next. I want you to choose 1 to 3 core goals for Q3 and Q4. And that's it. So I don't want you to do 10 and not grow everything at once. Just 1 to 3. And these are in alignment with your capacity, your purpose, and the season that you are in. And then I want you to break them down into manageable parts. So what I mean by manageable, so monthly benchmarks. So where you want to be by the end of each month. Weekly focus areas. What are your weekly themes or your priorities that move that goal forward? And then there's the daily action. So what's one small thing you can commit to daily that supports that focus? And having these kinds of breakdowns is what's going to create that momentum. And then I also think that is not going to have you overwhelmed. And then most importantly, it's going to build that confidence because you're no longer looking at these big goals that are so far off. You're focused on the next step. Also, you don't want to keep it all in your head. So put these focus areas where you can see them. So whether that's on your planner, a calendar, or a sticky note that's on your desk, I want you to make them visible to make them real. And then set a recurring time each month to check in. So what's working? What needs readjusting? What can I celebrate? Because that part, which is the celebration, is also important. We want to normalize acknowledging our wins. So even if they're small, you want to acknowledge and also celebrate, because at the end of the day, consistency isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters more often. So as we bring this mid-year check-in to a close, I want you to pause, and then I also want you to breathe. Because I can tell you right now, the good news is that you've made it halfway through the year. And no matter what your Q1 or your Q2 look like, you are still here. And you're still building, you're still dreaming, and you're still trying. And that matters. But now it's time to move forward with intention. Because here's what I do know. Success isn't about how fast you go. It's about how aligned you are as you go. So you can chase 100 goals and still feel lost, or you can focus on the right few and feel clear, supported, and at peace. And if you're a Black entrepreneur listening to this, I know that the world can feel like you have to have it all figured out, that you have to carry it all, that pausing means that you're failing or that you're behind. But I want to remind you that you are allowed to move at your own pace. You're allowed to reassess, you're allowed to pivot, and you're allowed to do what works for you. So here's your challenge this week. I want you to block out 1 hour for a real check-in. So we've covered a lot, but I want you to go somewhere quiet. It could be a coffee shop, it could be your couch, or it could just be a walk around your block. And I want you to use this time to reflect, to revisit everything that we have talked about. So what went well so far this year? What do you need to release? What do you need more of right now? What 1 to 3 goals will guide your next season? And what's one step you can take this week to support that? And this really is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters, and it's about doing it on your terms. And if it feels hard, remember this: you are not building alone. You have a community. You have the Black to Business space, and you are allowed to evolve. So let's reset with purpose. Let's move through the rest of the year rooted in clarity, with courage, and with care. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the Black to Business family, and for continuing to show up for your business and continue to show up for yourself. And I will see you back here next week. We have a special surprise next week. But until then, keep building boldly and keep pushing the culture forward. Later.